There is a way of protesting, puts more money in our pocket. I gave them 2 months to demonstrate that none of the money is going to be used in violation of the International Criminal Court Act or the Terrorism Act. I said to HMRC, by asking me for this money, you're breaking the law. If I give you this money, I'm breaking the law.
I'm breaking the law.
If I then don't report you to the police for asking me for this money, I'm breaking the law. It's that watertight. At no point did have HMRC threatened to take me to court. But you can use this process for any and all taxes. Your BBC license, parking fees, speeding tickets, council tax, income tax, the inheritance tax, capital gains tax.
If everyone in the country stops doing this and stops paying taxes by a dedicated system, then we all have a chance of pulling the government to heel.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes a duty. So said Thomas Jefferson. Go to bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history and find out why it is a criminal offence to pay central government or local government taxes in the UK. And let's make war history. Hi, I am joined once again by Mark. He is the bowler hat farmer. As you can see, there is his hat. This is our second video that we've done recently. And you've got a head under your hat. That's good.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about solutions, about what's happening with regards to the way that in Britain and many, many other countries, the food supply is being destroyed. And one of the solutions you talked about last time, and I'll link to that video, people should go and watch that video, is setting up local decentralized food hubs, where people go straight to the farmer to buy the food.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you want to say a little bit about yourself and what you're doing and your tour and everything?
Yeah. So thank you very much, firstly, for having us on the channel, because for me, we're travelling, my partner Gloria and I, she's tucked up in the back there, we're travelling in the camper van around the UK. We're doing 100 speeches. I think there's 107, which we're going to have finished by the time we get there. And we're travelling around the UK, talking to farmers in each town about the challenges that they're facing, in my opinion, the transition that they need to make. I'm not talking about, taking off the dress on a Friday night. I'm talking about real transition, and looking at how farmers can be involved in a new food structure and a new food system. So where they're in control of it, not the supermarkets who, sadly want to just smash farm into the ground along with the government. So, and then we're taking these talks out to the community centres, village halls, local pubs, whatever it might be. 50, 100, 200, 300 people in some cases are turning up at these venues to hear about the different options and what's happening with the farmers, if this is for the public side, what the changes and transition is in farming, and how that's going to affect the public in how they buy food in the future. So yeah, exciting times. Yes. And there's a growing movement away from the Great Reset, away from what the governments are doing, and in particular Keir Starmer, is it Keir Starmer or Keir Stasi? I think it's interchangeable, right? Are doing, which is essentially destroying the food supply, taking away our sovereignty and our liberty. But the other thing that they're doing is they're making us poorer, and they're doing that by printing loads and loads of currency, which is why I invite people to look at gold, silver, and Bitcoin. Yeah, and Bitcoin as a proxy for crypto, gold, silver, Bitcoin, other cryptos. Yeah. So the pound has less purchasing power. But at the same time, they're raising taxes on small businesses, raising taxes on farmers, and crushing us that way. So we're being squeezed at both ends, and they're increasing the regulatory overload on everybody and not investing. And all the while, they're telling us it's for our own good. Yep. Like proper abusers do. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Mark, there is something, I was so keen to speak to you or somebody from within the farmers movement, because there is a way of protesting, and this applies to anybody in Britain, and it will have applicability to anyone in any country where that nation has signed up to the Rome Convention Against Genocide or the international treaties against terrorism or the funding of terrorism. And what it does, it puts more money in our pocket. So then we have more money to spend on food and good quality food on life. Good quality food, of course, locally, directly sourced from local farmers, right? Yep. And less of it going into the coffers of the government to pay for their lifestyle, their private jets. Was it Lammy, the foreign secretary? How much is he spending on transport and everything? It just begs belief, and then they want to tell us we're the problem.
Yeah, and they're giving themselves a pay rise. No money for people with disabilities, no money for the elderly for heating them, loads of money for Zelensky, and loads of money for the MPs. They get a pay rise.
Well, I think just on that note, I think what we're seeing is exactly what the Americans have now exposed through the USAID, that all of this funding was disappearing all over the planet and nobody actually knew where it was going. And I think that's what we're witnessing in the UK without understanding still where it's going.
Yes. And it's probably loads and loads of similar systems here. In fact, probably more.
Probably more. I would say there's more, because America's only been going for a few hundred years. We've been under, since 1066, when they really started to understand how to tax people. We've been at this 1,000 years. We must be better at it.
Well, I don't know if you've ever watched any of my videos, my political coverage, right? But one of the things that I'm getting wiser to, and I think your partner may have a generational, or maybe I'll have an insight into this as well. It's like, oh, that makes sense. How come Britain, this tiny nation, led or ruled over a quarter of the world is they did it through proxy and subterfuge?
Yeah.
And they're still doing it.
Yeah, of course they are.
They're still doing it. Henry Kissinger was a British agent. He appointed Klaus Schwab as head of the WEF. So they're running the whole show in the background, pulling strings, pulling levers.
Yeah.
And this is one way, what I'm going to talk about with you, is that we can assert our own power, our own financial sovereignty. And this is legal, lawful tax protest. And credit goes to Chris Coverdale, who is you know Chris Coverdale?
He's a genius.
Absolute genius, anti-war campaigner. And I interviewed him. I heard his stuff on Richard Vobes. I interviewed him. And then I'm now part of that process, propertycode.com, but also bit.ly/makewarhistory and bit.ly/lawful tax protest. And they have calls every other Monday. I'm often on those calls because I've used the process and it worked. It worked, Mark. It really worked.
And that's what we're after, isn't it? Solution-based, challenging the system, and then come out with something that works and spread the word.
Absolutely. So, Mark, I know a little bit about, I know quite a bit about the law as a social worker in terms of where it comes into, family law and child protection and stuff, right?
Sure.
I'm used to going into legal proceedings and making legal arguments, and I'm used to dealing with legal arguments from, the people whom I'm disagreeing with and how judges adjudicate and everything. So what happened was I made a small capital gain on a certain digital asset. And like the good, honourable citizen that I am, I filled in my self-assessment form and said to HMRC, I owe you, it was about £1,500, I owe you £1,500 capital gains on the sale of this asset. I didn't tell them what the asset was, right? They don't need to know, but I made a capital gain, I owe you £1,500 tax. They said, okay. And then what I did, and feel free to interrupt me, because I said to you beforehand, right, that I wanted you to interview me because I want to spread the word about this.
Yeah. No, you carry on.
All right. So then what I did, I'd learned about the probity process, and I went to their website, bit.ly/makewarhistory, and I downloaded a trust form. Now, for people, trusts are really, really old and embedded in the British legal system, in the English legal system.
Yeah.
And what the trust said is that I'm the creator of the trust, the settler. HMRC are the primary beneficiary, provided they meet the conditions of the trust. They can have the money.
Yeah.
And I did. I got it witnessed. I didn't send them any money. I sent them a copy of the trust form. And it said, look, you can have the money, but you have to meet the conditions of the trust.
Yeah.
Now, the conditions of the trust aren't onerous. They were honourable. They're not burdensome. They had to demonstrate. HMRC I gave them 2 months to demonstrate that none of the money is going to be used in violation of the International Criminal Court Act or the Terrorism Act. Now, these are domestic statutes passed by Parliament. And they make it a criminal offence, Mark, put together for everyone to raise money for in any way that's going to be used to facilitate, fund, or support genocide, acts of terrorism, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, as defined by those statutes. So not what you and I think, whether what's happening in Gaza or Yemen or Ukraine is a violation of those statutes. Not my opinion about it. Well, what Parliament decided and how Parliament said, okay, we've ratified these international treaties, and genocide is the killing of one or more people that are united by race, religion, nationality, or ethnicity.
Yep. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
No more people. So the killing of Russians on the fields of Ukraine, so the bombing of Yemenis people, the support that our government is giving for the slaughter in the Middle East versus lobbying for peace. All of those activities are violations of the International Criminal Court Act and the Terrorism Act. And on the Probity Code website, it says what the provisions are. And in the trust, it lays out what the provisions are. And it says the International Criminal Court Act, there's a clause in there. I think it's section 71 or 72. This law binds agents of the Crown and all departments of the Crown. There's no exemption. And with regards to the Terrorism Act, the Supreme Court ruled that the Terrorism Act applies to military and quasi-military activities of the British Armed Forces, even when approved by Parliament.
Right.
There's no get-out clause. So HMRC had 2 months to demonstrate that none of this money was going to be used for breaking the law.
Yeah.
I want to break the law. Now, I was curious to see what their arguments were. So, and given my background in using the law and legal argument as a social worker, I went back and forth with them. And they said some rather interesting and curious things. They said you can't not pay taxes because of your personal beliefs. And I said, I've not mentioned my personal beliefs. I'm just referencing statute. Do you have an exemption to these provisions?
Yeah.
Is CGT exempt? Is HMRC exempt? If it is, please give me the exemption.
Yeah.
They also said, if you disagree with how the government is spending its money, you need to speak to your MP. I said, no. MPs have already decided. They've passed an act to say it's illegal to fund. Now, I said to HMRC, by asking me for this money, you're breaking the law. If I give you this money, I'm breaking the law.
I'm breaking the law.
And
breaking your moral conscience as well.
No, it's worse. If I then don't report you to the police for asking me for this money, like Mark, if you ask for your money because you're going to raise money for some prescribed terrorist organization and I don't report you to the police, I'm breaking the law. It's that watertight. Now, what they said is you have to pay tax by law. And I said, great, I want to pay my tax legally and lawfully. But look what these statutes say. Give me an exemption, either in case law or in statute that says that this doesn't apply. At no point did they ever give me an exemption. And I know, like, for example, Mark, if I'm a social worker, right, and I want to come and see your kids, I need your permission.
Yep.
Except I do have exemptions. I can, in certain instances, go to school, say to the school, I want to speak to Mark's kids. I haven't got Mark's permission, but I'm using this exemption. And the school will let me. Right? I'll give you the exemption. They didn't give me the exemption. So that tells me something. There isn't an exemption.
Yeah.
Now, they then referred me to a couple of debt collection agencies who wrote to me and texted me, and they said, please contact us, because HMRC have contacted us and we want to collect on their behalf. And I said, no. Do you have a fully valid, properly certified, properly executed court order that you can make this demand of me?
Yeah.
If you don't, go away. Otherwise, Mark, you could send me a letter and say, look, HMRC have been in touch. Please get in touch and give me the money and I'll pass it on. What do I do? No, I'm not going to, right?
See, the thing is, you have to smile at a lot of this stuff, don't you? Because you can back them into a corner quite quickly. I mean, I had a message come the other day that I'd apparently been done for speeding and whatever else, and they finally sent me a text message with a warrant for my arrest. A warrant's been issued because you haven't paid your speeding fine, which I ignored like I have the letters, and I'm not taking part in it because it's nonsense. And it's gone from £30 to £1,500, and I still ain't taking part in it. And now they've issued a warrant for my arrest. I just
by text.
By text. It's like, is there a wet ink signature on that warrant?
On that text. No, I'm going to send you a text afterwards, right? Asking you just send me some money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Here's my GoFundMe page.
Now, I know there's all sorts of processes and ways that people use to not pay these fines, fees, and taxes. However, the one that I'm using, the Probity Code process, is entirely within statute. They are up a barrel. At no point did have HMRC threatened to take me to court. At no point. They just said, look, could you please pay us? No. Now, after 9 months, I got fed up and I sent them an affidavit. Now, for people who don't know, an affidavit is a sworn statement of truth, and it was signed by a solicitor. He didn't check it. He just signed it that I'd witnessed it and everything, right? And it gives it legal force. And what I'm saying is, what I said in the affidavit is statements of facts. I have cited these statutes. I have said this to HMRC. At no point have they demonstrated that they have any exemptions. I'll give them 14 days to rebut that affidavit. They replied to me and they said, you have to pay tax. They still didn't rebut the affidavit. In fact, at no point did they ever mention in any of their correspondence the Terrorism Act or the International Criminal Court Act. Didn't even mention those statutes. So then I sent them a notice of default, which is said, okay, because an unrebutted affidavit is a summary judgment. It is truth in law. And they haven't, so that's it. The case is settled. Now, they did a few weeks ago write to me, say, look, could you please, you owe us CGT, please get in touch. I've ignored it. I might write to them and say, look, can you follow this, right? If you think otherwise, I'm going to work this out with my wife, then, we need to settle this dispute in court. But, I mean, they can keep asking. It just has no legal bearing. Now, there may be people watching, there may be farmers watching who for whatever reason, aren't as passionate about stopping war as I am, because I was involved in the anti-war. I joined the anti-apartheid movement when I was 18, and that was the beginning of my political journey. And I've been involved in anti-war campaigns, and I just want us to stop killing each other. Can we work stuff out peacefully, right? Now, people may not be that impassioned as I am, but you can use this process. Farmers can use this process for any and all taxes. Your BBC license, parking fees, speeding tickets, council tax, income tax, the inheritance tax, capital gains tax, anything that goes to government directly or indirectly, local or central government, ends up in one fund, the consolidated fund.
Oh, consolidation fund, absolutely.
Yeah, and then, but Mark, Mark, you strike me as a very law-abiding citizen who wants the best for this country and the best for the people here.
100%.
Right. So, do you know every time you pay tax, or if you pay that speeding fine, you are funding genocide and terrorism and war crimes. Your money is going towards the slaughter of children. That's immoral, and it's criminal.
Yep. And what I find frustrating in this is one of the reasons I've always said that I'm doing my tour, Rims, is because for me, I'm a dad and a granddad. And my biggest fear is that my children or grandchildren will end up with no food on their table.
Yeah.
Now, whether that is in this country or any other country, and let's face it, the one thing the British have always been particularly good at is causing carnage in other countries. And we can be as patriotic, as diplomatic as we like. The fact is that we have caused absolute carnage around the world and still are doing so. So I think that we know it doesn't matter. It's a bit like the farmers protesting against inheritance tax. Protesting is no good. It doesn't achieve anything. Please can I have permission not to take part in this? No. Oh, please. It's just ridiculous. What we need to do is everyone needs to challenge the system at the same time. Because if they start to get challenged like you have, and like you've put into play, a dedicated system that you can work your way through, get an outcome where they're backed into a corner. If everyone in the country stops doing this and stops paying taxes by a dedicated system, then we all have a chance of pulling the government to heel. And unfortunately, at the moment, I don't think our government's really running the show.
No. That's
one thing. And two, they're working towards an agenda which is, for us, is genocide of the UK. And not just the UK. This is something that is going to roll out, And I think what's sad in all this is they genuinely believe, the WEF or whoever it might be, they genuinely 100% wholeheartedly believe that they'll survive even when us lot are gone. Well, I don't know what they're going to survive on if there's no farmers. If they want to roll forward, eating bug burgers, good on them. I don't. If they want to be in a position that they're going to eat, coconut milk or whatever it might be, coconut cheese, whatever, then I wish them all the success in the world, but they're not taking me down with it. So this is what my fight's been about. And I guess for you, with your, with the information you're bringing to the table, it just goes to show there is so many options out there for us to challenge the system, yet, sadly, only 10% of us will at the moment.
But Mark, it doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't take a lot. I've heard percentages of 3% to 5% of the population take part in revolution, right? Now, I'm not calling for an armed
No,
revolution,
no, no.
right? Peaceful, legal, lawful, moral resistance.
Yes.
We're not doing this, right? And tax protest has a noble history of being effective. It works because it hits them in the pocket, plus more and more people get involved. There's a self-interest. I got that 1,500 quid, I can do other things with it instead of funding genocide and terrorism abroad.
Absolutely.
Use it to buy some Bitcoin or something.
Well, absolutely. Use it for something constructive. I
Yeah.
think that's where we're so programmed as society these days, aren't we? We're programmed to believe that the system, one, is the only option, and 90% of the population genuinely believe that the government will do nothing wrong by them. And gee, are they bloody wrong?
Yes, the biggest killer of all are governments. And when you said about the British government, you know, what they're doing to Ireland, I cover Ireland quite a bit on my channel. And
you know, I mean, my partner's from Nigeria, and I think I'm right. It was back in the 1960s they gave control of Nigeria back to the population, and they've spent the last 60 years in the background, still running it, but letting the public at least believe that their own people are running it and that they're messing it up. But it's not. It's the British government deliberately, constantly in the background, pulling the strings, you know, out there with the puppet masters and on the string, and constantly causing detriment to their livelihoods. Their money at the moment, their inflation is running at a ridiculously high rate. You know, come the end of the month, they can't afford to buy the food and so forth. This has been instigated worldwide by one government, a worldwide government that I genuinely believe at the heart of is the square mile of London.
Yep.
That's my own opinion. That's not, you know, I've gone down lots of rabbit holes. I've looked at lots of things, and you know, and I've been called various things by various people over the years. But all I seek is the truth, nothing more. And when the system doesn't want to give you the truth, it then puts you in a position of having to go find the truth. And when you start digging into it, and I mean really digging, not just going, oh, I saw a meme on Facebook, you know, I watched a video on YouTube. Actually go do some research for yourself. And I'd say this to everybody. Don't believe Rim, don't believe myself. Go do your own research and come to your own conclusions on this, you know. And unfortunately, we're not seeing enough of this. People have forgot how to research. People have forgot, well, I think people have forgot how to breathe on their own without the government telling them it's okay now.
No, absolutely. It is the city of London in the background pulling strings. And one way, during lockdown, you notice how all the Irish and British leaders are from the upper echelons of Pakistani and Indian society. Rishi Sunak, Varadkar in Ireland, Hamza Yusuf, all the elite families from Pakistan.
And now all of the mayors of the UK.
Yeah, yes, good point. And they were the proxies. That's how come Britain ruled a nation as rich, as large, as populated as India through proxies, and they're still doing the same thing. They're bloody experts at this. But, Mark, they're being exposed. There's more and more people who are waking up.
Yeah.
And
I think one point on that, you know, you or I, you know, undoubtedly over the times have been called racist. You know, I've been called, you know, white supremacist, you know, in my belief. What the white British people need to understand here is the challenges that are now going on in the UK were caused by the British.
Yes.
Not by anybody else. This isn't, you know, all the people who are migrating here, even if they are being paid to come here at present for a different reason, the people like you've said, your mum, your dad, that genuinely came to the UK, they were brought into the UK to do, you know, to work inside the system and to flourish, bring up their children, be part of the system. My partner has come to the UK from Nigeria to be part of the system. She wants to pay tax. She wants to be employed, and they won't let her. It's just, you know, and so I think that the public probably don't truly understand what's going on in the background to actually get to the point of how we got to where we are.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a very simplistic, superficial analysis, which is what the MSM mainstream media offers, in which what people do, oh, because of this or whatever, right? Or if you're opposed to immigration, open borders, then you're a white supremacist like me, right? That sort of very superficial analysis and not digging in, which is why we need to, and then we need to connect with others like yourself, Mark, on your tour, and share this video far and wide, and bit.ly/ Lawful tax protest, bit.ly/make-war-history. And actually, Mark, just something I want to say about the assault on Christianity and on white people in Britain. I joined the anti-apartheid movement because I wanted a South Africa that honored all people.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted African culture to flourish in that nation and not to be sidelined. Same deal here. Britain is a Christian country, and I want white people. It's just insane that I'm even having to say this, right? As someone who wasn't born here, right? I don't want any group persecuted. I don't want white people,
No,
Christians,
absolutely 100%.
because of that, right? We have a rich tradition and heritage, and the world is richer for that. And what the globalists want is this amorphous mix of people that are confused, don't know whether they're boys or girls, don't have a religion or a faith to anchor themselves by, that are fighting and squabbling with each other over scarcely dwindling resources that they control.
Yeah.
And that's why we must unite, inform, educate, resist.
100%.
Mark,
Al,
thank you so much. Anything
it's lovely to hear someone speak with such passion, because this is one of the things, when I'm out on the road, people say, oh my God, you speak with such passion when you're doing your talks. That's because it's belief. And that's what I always find, with these politicians and, people who are trying to push these WEF agendas and things, they don't genuinely believe what they're saying.
Are you saying Keir Stalin has no passion?
No.
You see, he's so alive and vibrant and pleasant to listen. I just want to listen to him more and more and more. No,
him and his friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything you want to say before we finish up?
No, it's been great to get to talk with you, and thank you very much. Don't forget to send me these links, and we'll get them on the channel, and we'll get them out to the public. So I think I'm a great believer in, adversity equals opportunity. We're going through the adversity at the moment. The opportunities are going to come out the other end of this within the forthcoming weeks, months, and years to come. And then we're going to see a very different world. And what we need to do is we need to build a new system that we start stepping into now, and then we bring along the masses as we build it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just say that although I did the legal tax resistance as an individual, I have interviewed a guy who owes hundreds of thousands of pounds because he runs a couple of hair salons, who's used this process successfully. So it also works for businesses.
Excellent.
Right. Thank you.
This is what we need, solutions.
Yep. All the best.
It's been great. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, buddy.